Welcome to the Extraordinary Executives Podcast, where business owners like you share their experiences, insight, and lessons learned. So grab your cup of coffee or tea and get ready for an engaging conversation. Here's your host, Randy Jones.
So welcome to the show, guys. This is Randy Jones, and welcome to Extraordinary Executives. I have a special guest for you today, Mr. Grant Schuster. He is the CEO and co-founder of Accelerant Manufacturing. He is a consummate businessman, a serial entrepreneur, and definitely an extraordinary executive. Welcome, Grant.
Thank you very much. I really appreciate being on.
Outstanding. Hey, man, well, I guess we'll get started right away. So tell me a little bit about Accelerant Manufacturing, or better yet, why did you start the company?
Yes, I'll start with the one joke that I have. So, I started my career in herbs and spices, and after a few years, I dropped the spices and I kept the herbs. I went into the cannabis industry in 2015. I know it's the only joke I have. So, hopefully this gets syndicated enough and people recognize that joke when they hear it, and I can get some royalties. But I joined the cannabis industry in 2015, joined a serial entrepreneur and got the MBA, but not in school. We raised $30 million. We wrote our business plans, our applications to the state, and did everything we had to do to win a license, and we did. Then the hard part came, and you had to actually build a business. So I worked with them for about 4 years, a little bit longer, and I went down to Florida to join a MSO, which is a multi-state operator. That's a big cannabis company. Did a manufacturing turnaround for them over the course of 12 months. And while I was there, I had 30 people rolling joints for me. And it wasn't a college dorm room. It was 30 full-time employees. We paid them. They didn't do it to get the joints. They did it to produce product. And I realized that was not sustainable. When you look at products and how they're manufactured and how people consume them, that wasn't a realistic outcome that we could have, a realistic process. So I joined with some partners, and we created Accelerant to solve two problems in cannabis. One is being able to produce product at a cost that makes sense. And the second is a business problem, which is cannabis has a lot of idiosyncratic issues related to taxation and raising capital that a lot of people don't know about. And so we said, if we can really solve both of these issues, we can really carve out a niche that works for most of the industry. Everyone always has their own opinion, so not everybody, but it really works for most of the industry. So that's how it got started. We have a great team of co-founders, engineers, and so on. And it's been a wild ride, as you can imagine, but it's been an absolute blast and a lot of fun.
Outstanding. So I guess from a CEO standpoint, are you more the visionary on a day-to-day basis? What's your role? Are you running the company? Are you wearing multiple hats, or what?
Well, with any startup, you have to wear a lot of hats. I'm a jack of all trades, master of none, but oftentimes better than a master of one is the full saying. And so I really enjoy being a generalist, and I think it's important in a early stage startup to really be able to cross from finance to marketing to sales, and then circle back and have an idea of engineering and how you want things to work. I was lucky enough we have a great team of engineers. There are certain things you really do need to be an expert at, not necessarily to own and operate a business, but in order for that business to be successful, you have to really understand what team you need, how much of that team you need, and how much you want to be successful, because a lot of that is learning. You got to let go in order to be successful.
Yeah, you talk about team. I often refer to together each achieves more. We said in the startup, a lot of our listeners are going to be listening to what are some of the tips, or what are some of the best lessons that you've learned when it comes to forming your team. You often hear people say, get yourself a board of directors, but then you get too many people who are experts chiming in and telling you how to run your company. What was your experience, or who did you see as essential members of your team?
Yes, I'll touch on board of directors now. I've been given advice at different times. Early in my life, I've always been given or taken mentorship very seriously. I had the pleasure of having a former COO of Coca-Cola. I met him for coffee in college, and he said, let me give you one piece of advice. find great mentors. And once I did that, I realized I could learn from their own mistakes and learn from their own learnings, even if they weren't mistakes. So I've always sought to learn from other people who have been there and done that. Not to say I'm going to do it exactly the way they did or didn't do, because every situation is different, every time is different, but at least I can draw from their experience. So early, we just assembled a board because very early in our startup, I think having a board would have been overbearing. I think now is the right time to have a board, and we've supplemented it with individuals who, have built very successful companies actually right around the DC area. And I think that it was the right time. So with a board seat or establishing a board, I think you want to find the right mix of vested interest, but also the right mix of experience and perspective that's different than yours. And it's evolving. They're not on the board forever. They'll cycle on, they'll cycle off. So, if you feel like you made the wrong choice, it'll eventually work itself out. But I think our board is fantastic. It's right for where we are today. As far as finding the team, one of my partners always has this saying, you got to learn to let go. I can guarantee you, if I still owned 100% of this idea, we would have failed. And I think that there's a lot of startup entrepreneurs who hold on too closely to equity and don't know who to give it to, when to give it to. And there's a lot of ways to protect yourself, right? So for our co-founders, obviously we invested all at the same time, right? We were the initial investors, but we brought in, technical expertise of people who have proven and been there. So a great example is our engineering partner. We gave a considerable amount of shares to via options, but also via we sold directly to the company. So he made an investment into us, but he's also built almost $500 million of automation before. And so we really wanted that expertise. I think we needed that expertise. And he thought what we were doing was very interesting. And so it was a great partnership that we have and continue to have. And that gives us a lot of resources. I think when it comes to finding partners, look, I'm replaceable. Everybody's replaceable. But it's about finding the right partners at the right time and giving them enough incentive. And I think if you have a partner who's willing to invest in you, you should reciprocate and invest in them, because it really will, it'll go much further than if they just invest into you, right? It becomes bilateral. And actually all of our board members are investors of our company, not necessarily in huge percentages, right? But just, they have a vested interest in our success. They're not just there to, check in and see how I'm doing.
Right. So your business is really unique, I guess, like a lot of entrepreneurs and business owners. But you're in a space that's sort of new in its infancy, and there are a lot of challenges and things out there. How have you guys sort of weathered the storm when it comes to politics, public opinion? But you often hear, videos and things or documentaries saying that, the cannabis field is a great infant business to get in if you know how to get in there and know the right people. How have you guys been able to, overcome the challenges and still become and maintain your success?
Yeah, so when you think of the gold rush, right? Everyone thinks of gold, but what most people made their money on really was picks and shovels. I've had the wonderful opportunity to be part of the gold rush, right? I was a part of a cannabis company from the infancy, really learned everything there is about the business, not to an expert level, right? But where I could understand how the industry works, right? How each business segment works, whether it's retail or cultivation or manufacturing. My home is really manufacturing, as you can tell by what we do. And so we said, we're in the picks and shovels business. That gives us a great opportunity where we're not exactly touching the plant. So from an investment perspective, we're investable from a lot wider group of people. Institutional funds can invest into my company. They don't have to worry about the backlash of touching the plant. Scott's Miracle-Gro, right, doesn't touch the plant, although they have made much deeper investment into plant touching operations than we have. And so I think that's kind of where in cannabis, it has evolved over time. 2015, when we raised that amount of money, we were one of the biggest funds that had raised at that period of time. it's not as significant anymore. You see hundreds of millions of dollars or billion-dollar transactions. I think it's still very much at the infancy. I would say that the cannabis industry is a lot more difficult than the news makes it out to seem. They think it's all green and rosy, but it's a challenging business. You have living assets, you have variable products, and you have both culture and counterculture sort of clashing at the same time. And it's really important in the plant touching operation to find that balance. And it's equally important in the picks and shovels business. We have to work with people who are part of the counterculture and part of the culture, you know, the existing culture, and really work together to solve problems. And so I like to think of the picks and shovels, it's picks and shovels and bridges, right? We have to bridge, you know, counterculture and culture and really help move the industry forward. So I think we're on the right path to doing that. But it is a challenging business, but it is definitely a lot of fun and no shortage of puns.
Hey, well, success doesn't happen overnight, neither does failure. And it looks like you guys are taking the right steps to, you know, make sure that you maintain and continue your success. You know, now thinking of that, business overall, whether you're in the cannabis business, you know, the construction business or whatever type of business, based on the things that you said, what are some of the challenges that, you know, just from maybe from an operational, maybe from a perception perspective, what are some of the challenges that you guys have run into? And I guess, how have you addressed it, you know, knowing that your business is sort of busting at the seams?
Yeah, so you're right. I mean, every business has a lot of the same issues. No business is completely unique. And certainly we've had our fair share. I would say our biggest issue, as anyone reading the news can find out, is supply chain. We are an all-American made machine, but there are parts that aren't made in America. They're made in Japan or France. And the various COVID lockdowns have had serious effect on our ability to deliver on time. And that creates a challenge in a young company, right? We capitalize based on a certain amount of burn rate, and that goes over time. And everything in a startup takes twice as long, costs twice as much, and you know is twice as hard. Right? You hear that saying all the time. I think that during COVID, during these lockdowns, during this particular time, you know, geopolitically, shipping issues that arise, I think things are probably taking 4 times as long. They're still twice as hard, but they take 4 times as long. And they probably cost 4 times as much. And it makes you have to pivot, right? If you were shipping by sea to save cost, you're now shipping by air to get it faster, and it costs you more, but you have to make that trade-off, you know, of time, cost, satisfying customers. You know, I come from a lean background, and delighting customers is number one. It's really hard in this time where vendors don't call you back. We have, you know, millions of dollars out in POs. And some of our vendors have $1 million of POs just with them. And it's hard when they don't call me back. Obviously, if I have $1 million of parts with you, I just need to know, right? Is it today, tomorrow, or in a month? And my best example is I ordered parts in April 2021, and they delivered to me unknowingly in February of 2022. That's like 9-month delivery, but every month they're like, oh, it'll come. So those are the biggest challenges today. But like every company, I think, you know, you got to build your team right. That's always a challenge. Do you pick the right people at the right time? You never start or you never end where you start, right? And so we constantly will evolve. But you're right, we're busting at the seams. We're very grateful for the orders that we have, the customers that we're delivering to. We're 10 days away from delivering our newest piece of equipment. We're extremely happy. And so, you know, everything will solve itself. We'll get over this hill, but it has been challenging.
You know, when I talk to, I think that's interesting that you say that. When I talk to business owners, and even people will come to me and they say, hey, Randy, I'd like to start a business. And I say, why? And they say, because I like helping people. And I say, well, volunteer is a whole lot easier, you know? One of the things that I wanted to know is, if you were to have a conversation, say it's 10 years ago, and you're to say, you see Grant walking down the street and say, hey, that's the younger me. What would the conversation be like? What type of business advice would you give yourself 10 years ago, knowing what you know today?
There's a lot more that you don't know than you know. But, you know, I think you have to really think about why you're doing what you're doing, who you're doing it with. And I think probably, I mean, that is a great question. You know, immediately, the first thing that came to my mind was hire a CFO earlier. because it's not my specific skill set and we have a complicated business model. So that was the first thing that came to my mind. But more tactically, I think it's that, everything's incremental, right? Every day, move the ball forward. Know why you're doing what you want to do, know what you're doing, and figure out every day how to move the ball up the hill just a little bit further. And one day you'll find out you're at the top and you just push it off the edge. I think that the younger me probably need to say, hey, dude, you need to pay a little bit more attention to the fine details. But those are lessons I've learned over time to where I am, where, not only pay a lot of attention to the small details now, but I also hire the right people to follow up on those details.
Yeah, I think you're absolutely right on that. I mean, as you guys have grown, and people say niches are riches, and you're seeing how the market is changing from the very beginning. You're not in the cannabis business, you're in the picks and shovels, the supporting of it. And who's going to be your ideal client or partner? Where's your sweet spot? As you guys look, I'm sure that's changed from the beginning to where it is now, especially with laws and everything like that. Who do you guys see as your target? I mean, even when it comes to
it's very interesting. I would say, initially we were looking for, the big bang, the MSO, right? If I can sell to one of those, I get 10 machines out. And I think the lesson learned there is the bigger the company, the longer the approval process. And we're working with a few now to get through their approval process. But there's smaller, the sort of mid to large size single state operators are very quick to make a decision. They know what they want, they know how they want to do it, and they understand the value proposition that we bring to them. And they were very quick to pull the trigger and be a great partner. And we've had a few very big Canadian operators as well. I think our customers are people who understand the value that we bring. One of my board members was one of the largest Xerox customers in the world. And I said to him, and this was part of my interviewing him for what I thought I wanted him on my board, but I wasn't, I was pretty sure, but he solidified it with this comment. I said, why didn't you just buy copiers? It obviously would have been cheaper. And he said, Grant, I'm not in the copier business. I'm in the data business. I have to get copies out faster and better than anybody else. Now, this was obviously in the 90s and 2000s before, internet was proliferated his industry, which he did pivot to. But I think that's kind of the idea. The customers for us who realize that they're not in the automation business, they're in the delivering high quality, consistent, reliable product to the market business, the selling of the cannabis products business. We're the support behind that. We're the Xerox copier to their salespeople.
Awesome. It's amazing. One of the things that I think is contributes to your success is really understanding the lane that you're in. I think the most powerful thing that a business owner can say is no. Because I think a lot of in the beginning when we're growing, we're like, yes, I'll do that. Yes, we'll do that. Yes, we can do that. Maybe we can also create that. Next thing you know, you're just dispersed versus diversified, and you can't really figure out where do we start and where are we going. I think that's really a big part of you guys' success, knowing where your lane is,
Exactly. And, you can do anything, right? But it costs time, money, and focus and resources. And I think to your point is, very early on when we were saying we're going to be automation as a service, right? We knew pre-rolls, but then we started to explore on other ideas. Some ideas are more expensive to trial than others. And for us, we at a certain point when the supply chain became very difficult on some of our more, out there ideas, we said, guys, we don't have the time to focus on that. We really have to focus on just deliver our first machines. Just get out to market with the machines that we know work really well, get our cash flow up, and then you reinvest into R&D and into new products. You can't do everything all at once with a limited bandwidth, right? I mean, right. You can do it all over time with unlimited money and unlimited resources, but you really got to choose what you put your time and money and energy into.
So, I mean, as you guys grow in things, what's next for you? I mean, I'm sure at some point all businesses start and transition one way or the other. Is it some type of, did you guys begin with the end in mind? Like, here's what our exit strategy is going to be from the very beginning? Or is it like, hey, we're going to get this thing off the ground and then we're going to do the next thing? So what's next for you guys? Where do you see this going?
Yeah, cannabis in general, the industry is still very much at its infancy. And I think our business model really applies to many different avenues or many different products. And we're in one. So, when you think about what you see from a consumer's perspective, if you've been to a dispensary or if you haven't, if you walk into any convenience store, you see a lot of different products. We think that there's an opportunity to automate many different products. And so we're going to work with our customers, right? The best products come from customers. We're going to work with our customers to figure out, what are their biggest pain points and how do we build on the service that we have today and continue to build it. It's really a fantastic business model. I don't think I really explained it well enough. So if you don't mind, I will.
Yeah.
But what we do is we actually give away very expensive automation. And when I say give away, I mean for almost nothing. And we charge everybody per joint made. So on a variable basis. So, at the beginning, when you first get our machines, it's a little bit more expensive, but over time it goes down to 8 cents. So for 8 cents per joint, someone can sell that joint for anywhere between $1.50 and $3 or $4 wholesale. And so we become a small percentage of their cost of goods sold, very reliable output. And so that for us is a really fantastic business model to look at different pieces of automation. And we invest more into our equipment than some of our competitors will charge you to buy theirs, right, including their margin, because we're investing in you as a customer. And so it's really a deep partnership. Our success is predicated on our customer success. We don't get paid if they don't get paid, right, if they can't make a product. And so it's really a very fun business model. And so we think there's a lot of opportunity to do both hardware and software related to the same production as we move forward. So I wouldn't say we had the exit in mind. I think we believe that we will have a very valuable company. And depending on where the legislation lands, either we'll be a target of somebody or we'll continue to grow.
Outstanding. So I guess outside of more customers or opportunities, what do you think would, you're in the day-to-day, you're deep in the trenches with it. What do you think would be the one thing that would probably move the needle in your business outside of more?
We have a really capital intensive business. A lot of people in the world today like to go asset light, right? Software as a service, or, asset light licensing companies, right? They create IP and they license it to other people because they're really attractive. We're sort of the other side of that, right? We're going to bear the assets. We're going to take that on. So is it a great business model? Yeah. Data centers are a great business model. And if you think about SaaS and data centers and you think about automation and cannabis products, hopefully we're the same thing that you think of, whatever your favorite data center is. But someone's got to own the assets at some point, and that's us. And so we believe that we'll have value-added services, value-added software that goes on top of that. But, the thing that drives our business and makes it a lot easier is capital. And part of that is, dealing with the supply chain, right? Extending out a little bit further on certain very difficult to get parts really helps. I think, that's kind of the thing that if I could get more of something today, right now, I'd probably say that. But I think, we become cash flow positive very quickly. And I would say I'm lucky that that's my biggest problem. I think we have just fantastic team members and partners. And so, we brought on a CFO earlier this year. And like I said to you earlier, I wish I hired him months and months, maybe even years earlier, because he's really that great. And so I think that those are the things that I think we've gotten right now is kind of the core team, the day-to-day operations. I think we're always iterating, always working better on. And I think that, capital is, and to use a name similar to ours, it's an accelerant, right? It's like putting fuel on the fire.
Well, hey, man, this has been awesome. I really appreciate your time, especially your story and your insight, as well as your experience. I guess I asked quite a few questions, and I know we talked about it a lot. If there's anything for our listeners who are watching this, one thing that you want to add, or one thing that I didn't ask that you just want to make sure, there's some business owner out there saying, hey, I think I'm going to start this widget company, or they might even start something else. What last piece of advice would you give to them?
So I'll give two pieces of advice. One is related to cannabis and one is related to regular business. The first one in cannabis is it's a lot more difficult than people think. And so as you are, I'm sure Randy gets it all the time, right? You get a lot of pitch decks from people saying, I'm going to make X amount of money. It's going to be all rosy. It's going to be fantastic. cannabis is a really tough business. And I think before you invest in anything, and I'm a big bull on the market, right? Otherwise I wouldn't be in it. But I think that you really have to check with other industry experts. Randy can always reach out to me if you want an extra set of eyes. I'm happy to help. Anyone who's a friend of Randy's a friend of mine. And so happy to help there. So just be careful investing into the industry. I think always know your customer, right? The best products are going to be driven from customers' needs. That's the best piece of advice. I was my customer. It was very easy for me to figure out that this wasn't going to work long term. I had to start a company because I couldn't find what I needed. So I think that is probably the single best piece of advice I can give someone is you really got to know your customer. And if they have a real need, then you might have a business. So it's up to you to see if it succeeds or not. But if they have a real need, I think that's where businesses should start.
Yeah, and one thing I forgot to mention, with all the success, with all of the growth that you guys are having, you're also creating tons and tons of jobs for people. Being on the cutting edge also has, it has its challenges, but it also has rewards. People are going to work because you got in it.
Absolutely. And higher paying jobs too. Like I said, we're all American made equipment. We make our equipment in Maryland and Missouri. We have our own staff. Our partners have their staff, and we provide consistent business. And to the cannabis operator who's our customer, this isn't, turning on a coffee maker. It's got a little bit of complexity to it. And so those employees tend to be higher paid as well because, they're relying on their high performance using a complex piece of automation. So, it really continues to serve the industry, the people in it. And it brings me a great amount of pride to know that, I'm an employer in the U.S. and we're making everything here.
Well, hey, thanks, Grant. Everybody, I want to remind you, we are talking with Grant Schuster, the CEO and co-founder of Accelerant Manufacturing. He makes a difference in his community. He makes a profit in his company. He makes a transformation in his people. And I really thank you for joining us today. He is absolutely an extraordinary executive. Talk to you soon.
Thank you very much.
This podcast is for informational purposes only. Guest speakers and their firms are not affiliated with or endorsed by PAS, Guardian, or Financial Growth Partners, and opinions stated are their own. Randy is a registered representative and financial advisor of Park Avenue Securities, LLC, PAS, OSJ 11350 McCormick Road, Suite 202, Hunt Valley, Maryland. 21031-410-828-540. Securities, products, and advisory services offered through PAS, member FINRA SIPC. Financial representative of the Guardian Life Insurance Company of America, Guardian, New York, New York. PAS is a wholly owned subsidiary of Guardian. Financial Growth Partners is the DBA name of IAPA, LLC, a wholly owned subsidiary of Guardian. 2022 139007 624.